Welcome to Perspectives with Asama Silva. This show covers a lot of different topics, and today is just as interesting as any of the others that you might have seen. Today we have the author of a book, P for Palestine. And this is Dr. Bashi, who's going to be joining us via Skype, and will be telling us about her book and how she got interested and what her motivation was for this book. So thank you, Dr. Bashi, for joining us today. And I know you are a professor of history. If you could tell us a little bit about where you're teaching and what is the concentration of this discipline of yours.
Thank you so much for having me on your show. I'm honored. I teach history, world history, and basically it's more to do with sort of Islamic societies, medieval and modern Islamic societies. I became interested in history by virtue of being, born Iranian. I think when you are born in post-colonial nations, especially, you're curious about where you come from and why your life may be different than some of your friends, especially if you live, say, in Europe or in North America. So I always wanted to know, why is it that, my homeland or my parents' homeland is different and faces issues that are different than, for example, Sweden, where I grew up as a refugee. So I became interested in history because of my own background.
And you're saying that you teach Middle Eastern studies, specifically more with an Islamic background or Islamic studies. If you can maybe differentiate what exactly those two things are. Sure.
In the U.S. Academy, or we have something called Area Studies, and this is a sort of post-Cold War discipline. Basically, it started in U.S. universities in competition with the Soviet Union. Soviet Union being, bordering with so many countries in Asia. The U.S. wanted to know as much about these countries as the Soviet Union did. So we have the rise of what we know as area studies and Middle Eastern studies or Japanese studies. So that's where it comes from. I don't like the term Middle Eastern studies, both personally and professionally, because east of where, depending on where on the globe you're standing. If you go to India, to any university, and where they study, for example, countries, like Iran or Syria, they don't call it Middle Eastern studies. They call it West Asian studies. So which I like far more than the colonial name for it. Now, it really depends on the era that you teach or you researched. My focus has been modern Iran, especially women's issues and gender. But I have taught both medieval Islamic history and modern history of Middle Eastern countries, and they're predominantly Muslim majority. So there's a lot of Islamic history in it, but you cover non-Muslims, obviously, and you cover pre-Islamic history as well. So I don't know if that's the
You piqued my interest. You said something that I'm actually very interested in. You said you concentrated on women in these areas. Could you give us a little bit of background of women's roles and how they've changed, and what is like a few interesting points that you'd like to share with us? It really, that's one of my personal interests when it comes to women's rights and whatnot, especially considering the Middle Eastern or the West Asian countries.
Sure. It's a really difficult question. It's, women are, as you well know, we're half of humanity. And the life of an American woman, can be very different from one American to another. If you live in the Upper East Side of Manhattan, if you're a white person of privilege, as an American woman, then your life is very different than if you are a woman of color or a poor white woman. So, you have those sort of class differences in Islamic societies as well. So the life of a Iranian woman who belongs to sort of the upper echelons of society is different than a working, laborer, female laborer in Iran, or in Bangladesh or anything. I think the issue we face is that, we generalize. I think media here generalizes Muslim women or Muslim woman as this one entity, when there are as complex and have different issues, just as American women do. I'm sure you've seen pictures from the Women's March. There was one particular picture from just this past weekend where you have a woman standing saying, if Hillary was elected, I'd be having brunch, as in, like, I wouldn't be here fighting. Right. I think many women at the march would disagree with this statement. And so, Muslim women, just like any other women, have their own histories and narratives, and they express themselves. I think the problem we face here in America especially is that we don't get to hear it as much through mass media, but through social media, I think we get to see more and read more, and watch movies made by Muslim women or Arab women, and learn more about them.
You said you were a refugee in Sweden, I believe. How did you get to United States, and how did you move here, and your history of, now ending up teaching also in this country?
Sure. Like many Iranians, the revolution affected my family, and my parents and my sisters. We decided to leave during the war. This is in the 80s, and at the time, Sweden was one of the countries that would accept Iranian refugees readily. So my family took refuge in Sweden, and we were very lucky, and being a refugee in Sweden is very different than being a refugee in a Palestinian camp, or even in Sweden today. Things have changed. I was always interested in traveling. My family, we used to travel a lot. My parents are both great adventurers. So as soon as I could, after graduation from high school, I decided to study in England as part of the EU. Moved there, spent almost a decade studying there. And through my work, my research, I ended up at Columbia University in New York. Once you come to New York, and you stay. So I liked it very much, felt very much at home here. And I've taught. I'm not a full professor by any means. I'm an adjunct professor, so I teach on a part-time basis now. And there are semesters when I don't teach, but I would love to teach more, sort of on a full-time basis.
I'm assuming it's a very popular area of study and teaching, especially in the recent times, with all that's going on in the Middle East and Palestine. I'm assuming it's a very popular course when you do teach it.
Actually, it's not. Since 9/11, there has been, there was a huge sort of uprising against area studies. Again, if you look at its beginnings as a means for U.S. intelligence gathering against the Soviet Union, after 9/11, many sort of right-wing sources were questioning, why didn't the Middle Eastern Studies Department predict this? And why are they teaching Iranian cinema? Why aren't they, doing intelligence on behalf of the U.S. government? So it shows that area studies has moved on since Cold War era. So in fact, there has been a crackdown on Middle Eastern studies because, a lot of right-wing organizations and sources believe that we're not doing our job, that we should be focusing on, intelligence when Middle Eastern studies is as varied. There are people who do intelligence and security and all kinds of things, and there are many think tanks who specifically take on that kind of work. But then you have sociologists and historians and people who are interested in cinema. So that there's been a great crackdown in our discipline. Full-time positions are very few. and we have organizations that are paid to, harass professors who are, who speak on behalf of Palestinian human rights, for instance. So the campus environment actually for professors like myself is not a very pleasant one. And right after 9/11, it was pretty horrific. I was a student myself then, but it's very much a sort of modern day McCarthyite, like a witch hunt. And there are several websites that, collect dossiers and show, or they, what do they say, warn American families from sending their children to certain schools because so and so, is considered left wing and pro-Palestinian, and so there are a lot of labels, false labels thrown at us, and so it's I hope that it will improve. It doesn't seem like it, but students continue to get their sources, and many of our colleagues are very courageously continuing to teach and research critical matters. So.
I was not aware of that. I don't think many people are aware of the situation you just described. I think a lot of people believe that in academia it's pretty open to lots of thought and education and really seeking the truth. But what you're saying is there's a lot of crackdown on professors who may hold the unbiased or maybe unpopular view from the mainstream media. It's kind of surprising that you're saying that it's almost as if professors have to be courageous to teach kids certain topics and areas. And I also was not aware that schools and professors or students were viewed in terms of courses as an opportunity to go and investigate and spy, for the lack of a better word, rather than just study. I always thought it was more of an area of study and not in terms of looking into our security or spying or intelligence.
Yeah. I think it's a pretty American phenomena. We've had the McCarthyite sort of era during the Cold War began in Hollywood, and a crackdown on filmmakers and journalists, and and it's always been there. Sort of this Red Scare, as they call it. Back then, it was sort of like you're a communist, and so if it's a state-funded university, then our money shouldn't be going towards so-called communists and so forth. So it's always been there, but I think after 9/11, there was definitely, the crackdown and the harassment against professors of Islamic studies, Middle Eastern studies. That's when it really began, and it's something that has been there. I mean, it began really after Edward Said's book Orientalism, so it's you have private university, state-funded university, and there's people who have a lot of not only issues with it, but who have the means to organize and crack down on free thinking. So it's unfortunate, but it's very much an American problem.
So one of the reasons you're our guest today is your new book, P for Palestine. And is this one of your ways to continue educating people on this topic? What was your motivation for writing this book?
I've said it in other platforms as well. I love alphabet books. I have 2 children myself. I think it's important to have books about different countries for children, and there are so many books about all kinds of places, and they're wondrous. And and about Palestine in particular, I couldn't find much in English. There is a lot in Arabic. Palestinians are prolific authors and artists. You have cartoonist Najal Ali, the late Najal Ali, who created the Handala. You have Hassan Kanafani, another children's author, late Kanafani. And so, I felt that I wanted to have an alphabet book about Palestine for my own children. And for friends of mine in Sweden, we grew up with not much about our countries as children. You know, I remember when Aladdin came out, Disney's Aladdin, that was sort of the first time something about our, but then, you know, then you watched it and
And you
Swedish
laughed.
kids would ask me, do they really cut off your hands? You know, if you steal something? Like, no, this is a cartoon. So, and even today, there are people, you know, get their information from Aladdin. So I wanted something different out there in English in particular. So I decided to write it, and I have more books similar to Peace for Palestine
Coming up. And what is been your what has been the reaction that you have received after writing this book?
You know, it was, we did a crowd fundraiser, me and the illustrator of the book, and we were so positively surprised by the, you know, by the support. People pre-purchased the book, which was really lovely. You know, there is so many crowd fundraisers happening, and so we felt from the very beginning that this was something right that we were doing, and that other people felt so too. So it was nice that our crowd fundraiser, however modest it was, that it was successful. It was really lovely, and so from then on, you know, the messages were coming. When will the book be ready? I can't wait. There were adults, you know, who said, "I wish there was such a book when I was a kid," and so very positive. Palestinian American community, you know, really gave us their blessing and supported this, and you know, we received advance praise from Palestinian authors and scholars and so forth. So that was really important to make sure that, you know, I may feel Palestinian at heart, but I'm Iranian. So I wanted to make sure that this was the right thing to do. So it was really nice. I mean, writing it was so much fun. Working with the illustrator, Golbarg, was a lot of fun. So, and then the reactions after the book came out were a bit different. But yeah.
So I know before we get into the other reactions, what do you hope to, what's your goal when children read this? Is it to educate them about Palestine? Is it to give them a kind of more of an education that there was a Palestine, because God knows what's going to happen in the next 5 or 10 years? But what is your hope that you want to accomplish with this book?
You know, I want children to know that, I wanted children to see themselves in this book. So the heroine of this book is a little girl with curly hair, and you know, and so I wanted to sort of diversify children's literature in that sense, and for children to know that, you know, this place called Bethlehem that we talk about all the time in December, it's not just an abstraction. It's an actual place. You know, it's in the West Bank, and or for example, Jesus Christ. He's not an abstraction. He historical figure from somewhere, and where is that somewhere? It's Palestine. So the book is, you know, even if you're not interested in Palestine, it's a solid alphabet book. So every page teaches you each letter, and it rhymes, and it's fun. So, you know, A is for Arabic, B is for Bethlehem. So learning the alphabet and visually kind of, you know, have something beautiful to look at. And if children who are not Palestinian learn about Palestine, then that's wonderful. But the main goal really is for the Palestinian children to feel that, you know what, this thing we eat, or this place I come from, you know, here's a book about it. And they already know it, but it's always nice to have it. You know, I wanted something like that myself, something positive, say, about Iran, a children's book, right, where I could have taken it to school and said, hey, it's not, I'm not making this up. Look, it's pretty, or, you know, this, in a child's view. So that was the intention, and remains the intention.
So I get the feeling that this book is not only for children, but also addresses some of the psychological interests that they may have of where do I come from? Where did my parents come from, and what did this land mean, and why is it so significant? I think that's excellent. But I was reading online, some people had criticism about why is there a book, because some people feel, there are people out there that feel that Palestine doesn't exist, and Israel exists now. So why is there a book that was, really, of all the letters that you could have picked for the title, why P for Palestine?
Because P is for Palestine, just as P is also for Pakistan, or P is for the Philippines, and Palestine is recognized by the United Nations as a nation, and it is recognized by hundreds of sovereign nation states as a nation. The fact that in America the discourse is so incredibly narrow, that shouldn't prevent scholars or authors or anyone to deny that fact or forget it, because sometimes sitting in New York, one can forget what's going on around the globe, because you can get so caught up in the narrative here that you forget that actually the Pope visited Palestine, and so and so visited, and it really it's there, and it's not something that I'm saying. United Nations says it. So why shouldn't there be peace?
How would you answer people who ask the question, so if this book is about Palestine, does it address Israel at all?
I compare it to sort of the Native American issue or history. If you're writing a children's book about Native American nations, and you want it to be about Native American tribes and nations and so forth, you want to concentrate on that. Of course, Native American history is one of genocide and occupation and colonization also. Now, how do you address that in a children's book? So this certainly came up with Peace for Palestine. So there are references in the book to the fact that Palestinians are people who live under occupation. There are, and that's something that, as a morally, I hope anyone writing about Palestine for children can't deny that. So we have some references in there that kind of shows that yes, it is a people who lives under occupation, but it's a proud people, and the children dream just like any other child, and they have fun flying kites on Gaza Beach, or playing with Santa Claus, or running around in Nazareth and so forth. So I think that's what I tried to do.
So if people are interested in getting the book and knowing more about the book, where can they go for more information?
Right now, the book is available. The second edition of the book is available online, so they can visit our website, and from there they can follow the links to where they can purchase it online. We're hoping to make it more available in bookstores and in other countries as well. So online at the moment.
Are there any hopes for another book after this? What age group is this particular book for?
This is a really good question. An alphabet book is usually for a toddler to a preschooler, but my own kids were usually frown on alphabet books because they're a little bit older now. They're really into it, and I've done 2 readings of the book, and I have grown-ups who are very enthusiastic about it, and they'll be like, can you sign this for me? And then this other one for my children, because I want to keep one for myself. So, it's from a pedagogic sort of standpoint, for learning the alphabet, it would be, toddlers to preschool, but then, we're getting feedback from all age groups who like it, for its visuals, for its rhyme, for its subject matter.
So is there hopes for another following for another age group afterwards?
Absolutely. Several manuscripts that are ready at the moment, and so hoping to publish them as best as we can, given the limited resources that we have. But it's a really good place to be, and I think I'd like to stick around with alphabet for a while. And there's something about it that I really love. I had trouble learning the alphabet as a child myself, especially the Persian alphabet. So, I think if you love the alphabet, then your love for learning and reading, all of that will sort of come as well, and you'll have a special relationship with these letters that can be quite daunting for a child.
I believe the book is right behind you, if you'd like to show our viewers what the book looks like.
Absolutely. There we go. So this is the book. It's a hardcover book with a dust jacket, and this piece for Palestine, a Palestine alphabet book, and it starts off with a bunch of children who are wondering, who are saying, can we sing the ABC anywhere? With a woolly bear or on thin air? So sort of, asking, where can we sing the ABC song? Can you do it anywhere? And here comes the heroine of our story from Palestine, who says, yes, let's align. We're going on an alphabetic adventure to Palestine. So she takes her friends on this journey to her homeland, and their themes and concepts and actual places. A is for Arabic, my tongue, and so forth. And I'll read from my favorite page. Here we have F is for falafel. Fresh, fast food, every day's good fuel.
I think I like that page myself.
Yeah, it's a great one. And children get hungry when they get to that page. And this one's my favorite, G. G is for Gaza, a city like Mombasa, without any plazas, but full of generous casas, referring to casa, the Spanish casa, casa. Yeah, so, and then it goes all the way through to the letter Z.
And what I noticed in the illustrations is there's a lot of diversity in terms of women covering or other kids covering their hair. And even what you just showed with the heroine of the book, wearing the Palestinian, kiffa, for just showing her heritage. And I think that's excellent. And I know my own kids really love when they see diversity in books and get really excited. So I hope you the best. And we're almost at the end of the show. But thank you for joining us. And for me to wrap up today, it was a great conversation. I learned a lot. I did not know that professors in their own right were so courageous on teaching certain topics. That I did not know that if mainstream media or if our government does not agree with certain topics, that it's almost as if they themselves are on the front lines trying to educate people on these very controversial topics. And I really thank again Dr. Bashi for joining us, and please support her and buy P for Palestine. And what I would suggest is not only buy it for yourself, but maybe get one for your library so that other children can also enjoy it and share. Thank you so much, and I hope you join us again.